All right. Hello, Honors 110. So here we are at our very last class here together. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to work with you all. So we have two final reading assignments scheduled for today. So it's Stephen Moore's What Was True Then, as well as Zoe Bossier's How It Ends. And so I think we'll find these kind of a fitting way to wrap up the course overall. They're both shorter reading assignments, which I hope encourage many of you to still read them, even though I know it's the very end of the class, and sometimes that's a little bit less desirable to do when I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on between this class and your other obligations. But let me go ahead and dive in. So for each of these readings, I'm going to assign a short kind of free writing exercise. I'd love for people to participate in both of them. Obviously, do what you can. I'd love to do at least one of them to participate in the discussion below. But so to start off with the Moore reading here. So I wanted to first just kind of go to the concept of how Moore refers to himself in this essay. So it's an unusual choice that he starts out in the first person, but he moves into this sort of third person mode where he refers to himself as Steve, with the suggestion being it's this younger version of himself. And I'm just curious as to what we make of that choice. What does it mean to call himself by this other name? Why do we think he makes that choice? Why not sort of just stick in first person? What's going on there? Kind of what was the impact for you as a reader? Let's see. And then I want to go to this spot. This is on page 1, the last couple sentences of the second paragraph here. So it reads, the unknown. According to recent intel, the unknown includes between 100 and 500 Taliban fighters in this immediate vicinity, which means Steve and his unit are outnumbered either 2-to-1 or 10-to-1, depending on what you choose to believe. Steve chooses not to believe these reports at all. He simply respects them. And I think it's an interesting kind of choice of how we're kind of delineating these verbs, believe versus respect. And I'm curious as to how we understand that, what kind of sense we make of that. From there, there's this part on, let's see, this is the second page. It's this first big paragraph here. And so I'm going to read, let's see, I kind of skip around a little bit here, but I read most of this paragraph. So there's a lot of unfair pressure on this book to be a really good book. It's the only book he has. He used to have more room to keep books, but he's living out of a rucksack now, and the ruck is full. There's only room for one at a time. He mailed the rest home back when there was still access to mail, and now he reads this one on his cot, in his hole. The headlamp takes AAA batteries, which are rare, so the amount of time spent reading is also known as the amount of time using up AAA batteries. So it's extremely important that what is actually inside the book, shipping all this way to read in a dark hole in a dangerous valley where often it is better to just sleep because it may be a while before you will have another chance. What's actually inside the book, it feels silly to say, but it seems like the first time this question has ever occurred to him. What are the words in there? What do they do? And could we get by just as well without them? Never while studying literature did it seem like stories were responsible for anything. Let's see, I'm going to skip all the way to the last few sentences here. The book is full of words, as if for the first time. Really, he needs this book, not simply as a distraction, but he needs the book to tell him something he can keep. He doesn't know what he needs exactly, only that he needs it. So this kind of meditation on reading in this situation when Moore is literally in a war zone, I'm just curious as to what we think of that. What is the value of literature, maybe art, in these violent circumstances, in these incredibly stressful circumstances? Why does this seem to matter so much to Moore, and maybe what does this kind of tell us more broadly? And so I'm going to include a writing prompt related to the Moore. It's going to be sort of similar to what we did for the Cisneros reading earlier on, where we go kind of paragraph by paragraph, loosely following the structure of what Moore has done here, to encourage a little bit of reflection for yourself. So again, if you have the time, the desire, I'd love to see some write-ups, at least to part of that. If you want to even just choose like one or two of the paragraphs, that would be great. Otherwise, we have this reading, How It Ends. With this one, let me start out just by reading this first paragraph and then a little section I'm going to add on to it. So on 247, it reads, honestly, I still don't know what to say when people ask about my childhood. where to begin, how to thread the right words into a narrative that ties the boy I was to the woman it seems like he has become. More often than not, I choose the wrong ones. The boy's story doesn't make sense to the person I'm telling it to. The answers I give only inviting more questions. I explain and explain myself until the asker understands nothing about who I am or am not, who the boy was or wasn't, what having a gender is supposed to mean when you look one way but feel another. And I want to pair that with this short snippet on 248. It's the third paragraph here. But of course, the specters of our past are always one or two steps behind us, patiently waiting for their chance to catch up, even take the lead. And so with that, I want to introduce the free write for the boss related to the Bossier reading for today. What are the wrong stories to capture how you moved from childhood to the person you are today? I think Bossier's kind of framing of that, I think it just is sort of interesting. What does that sort of mean to you? And beyond that, what does it mean for specters of our past to always be one or two steps behind us? Because this, I think, regardless of how much you do or do not identify with what Bossier has written here, I nonetheless think that idea is fairly universal, this idea of kind of our specters following us in that way. Okay, carrying on here. Again, I hope some folks will be able to write a little bit in response to that. But I want to look back on the very first page of this thing on 247, towards the middle of the second paragraph. There's this part that reads, I romanticize the desert's grit, like the cowboys at the horse corral whenever they talk about the Old West, how things out there used to be. But their characterizations of that time and that place and themselves weren't all true. I guess mine can't be all true either. So what does this mean about how we sort of romanticize places and tell their stories? I'm just curious if this dynamic sort of feels familiar beyond just the confines of this book and what we sort of think of that. Okay, carrying on here. Let me go skip ahead a little bit here to 251, and actually right to the bottom of that page into 252. My university's LGBT Center introduced me to the Outgrads, a campus group created by and for queer graduate students. At first, I was nervous to join them, worrying I might not be queer enough or in the right ways. My story long and complicated. And so I'm curious about the sentiment of not being enough for this kind of organization, what we think Bossier even means. Again, if that's sort of relatable to anyone, has anyone kind of felt that way, whether it's about a formal organization or whether it's less formal kind of social groups or whatnot. Okay, but let's see. I want to go to page 253 in this first paragraph here. Let's read this. So one late, tired night, I was while I rocked my sleeping infant, I searched on my phone for Cactus Country, not sure what I would find. The park is still out there, just as I remembered, an island in the desert off Interstate 10. The surrounding area has been developed now with big box stores and fast food chains encroaching into what was not long ago miles of remote, pristine desert. The land between the park and the railroad tracks where I once roamed in boyhood so far remains untouched. But in the time since I left Tucson, Cactus Country has become a 55 and up senior community. The playground where I've spent so many long, hot days with the boys has been raised to make room for more campsites. Our favorite Palo Verde tree is gone. Kids are no longer welcome to stay in the park. I cannot bring my own children to see the place I grew up, a thing I had not known until that moment I might want to do. So for this part here, again, it's kind of a more general question of can we kind of relate to this at all? I think this concept of places sort of changing, kind of right under our noses, it's just sort of interesting, right? So I think some of you, depending on if you've moved around, if you've been in different houses, different apartments, whatever it might be, may have already kind of experienced this to some degree where it's not your space anymore, where it's kind of changed or whatnot. As a broader one, this kind of predates even my time at the Honors College, but not by very much. The Honors College actually used to be located in the Lead Library, and we've since expanded, and now we have this nice, relatively large space in the RLL building. But nonetheless, I still have colleagues who remember very well when their offices were there in the library, and kind of to go into that space. And be like, this used to be like the place where I spent most of my day. And now it's this totally different function that the space is being used for. It's just kind of this surreal sensation. So again, I was curious if anybody connects to anything like that. But okay, with that, I think I'm actually going to cut myself off there just to not get too carried away. I know this is our last video, and with the free writing exercises, there's plenty for you to respond to here. So with this, I just want to add one kind of closing thought for the class. Again, I really appreciate working with you all. I know these summer and online classes are a little bit different than the in-person thing, and spending 15 weeks together. But nonetheless, I hope you feel like you've walked away from this class, with some valuable insights, some new material to think about. I always tell my students at the end of class that I consider it to be the case, once you're my student for life. So as online students, obviously I didn't get quite the same amount of FaceTime with you. Some of you I've had before in other classes, some of you I have not. So you might have to introduce yourself if we run into each other on campus, or remind me who you are if it's been a few semesters. But nonetheless, please don't be a stranger. If there's anything I can help you out with, again, I'm not kind of in a capacity where I'm going to assign you extra essays when you're not my student or whatnot, but being my student for life to me means that if there are things that I might be suited to help you with, please don't be a stranger. Please always consider me a resource that you can kind of get in touch with, or otherwise just keep in touch in general. I always love hearing from past students. Okay, thank you very much for watching this and for such a great summer session here. And yeah, hopefully I will see you all down the road.